Okay, we are live here. This is Nate Miller from DigiFX, and I want to thank you all for joining me at this moment. It's an exciting day for me because I have been working really hard on releasing my geolocation game Oasis Live, and I wanted to share with everybody what's next. It is true. I did just deploy my application to the App Store a couple days ago, and it's been waiting for everything to get together. But I encourage you to download it, check it out. If you have a newer Apple device, it is version 1, so a lot of the older devices are going to have trouble handling a lot of the 3D and the AR, but we are working on improving the gameplay for all, and we're also pushing to Android in the new year in a couple of weeks. So for all you Google Play gamers out there, you won't be left out. We just had to fix stuff on one side to bring it to the other. So I thought it would be good to kind of show you where we're at, what we're doing, and where we're going to be in the upcoming months. The aim here is to release the full version, the geolocation aspect of this, in the spring. And the reason why I've postponed it is because I want to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity to get their hands on it, whether you're in the Northeast where I am, where it's pretty wet and rainy and cold most of the time this time of year, or out west or down south where the sun always shines and you don't have issues when it comes to weather besides just the other factors of what you get out there. So in front of me here I have a look at our actual Unity build of the application itself, and bear with me if this does have some issues playing. I am doing a lot here. I'm broadcasting and I'm running a lot of stuff on a MacBook Pro, and so sometimes it does mess up, and I have to reboot. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it doesn't happen today. So what we have successfully delivered as of yesterday, and let me just see, is we actually were able to get our application Oasis Live on the store, and as you can see, it's just a 6 instance adventure of some examples of what you can expect to see within the geolocation game. Now, in front of you here, these are just some screenshots I took, and since then we have improved upon a lot of the instances and aspects of the gameplay, but you can see we have a lot of cool environmental augmented environments that we've built into, where not only you're augmenting 3D, but you have a controller, an inventory system, NPCs, and a lot of really fun stuff that makes it an adventure. So I wanted to get this out, start getting some feedback and some player engagement to see what they think, what we can do to improve upon it. And I'll also note that we do have a Discord channel we set up, and we have our Facebook page to where we are going to be continually developing the gameplay and the actual experience as we get feedback provided from people that are into this kind of stuff. So encourage you to download it, just search the App Store for Oasis Live, and you'll see it's on there along with some other fun stuff. So in the upcoming weeks we'll see what we can do to improve it and hopefully get people excited about what we're trying to accomplish here. So in front of me here, this is just my After Effects thing I was working on. I have our Oasis core system, which runs Oasis Live, and if you follow me on, let me just make sure I'm not blasting some music in the background, and I apologize for the servers you hear. That is, I'm in a small server room, and so the lighting, that's why you see a little bit of keying issues right there. And the sound in here is, it varies depending on what's happening, so I'm trying to promote myself and turning the mic up so it doesn't affect the background noise, or it does, it records over it. So I apologize. Soon we will be recording in a better place, but this is all I got for now. So I have the core system here, and I'll show you kind of what we do to improve upon the gameplay experience. And so right now what we're doing, and I'm also going to turn off the audio just because we have the gameplay here. We have one of our very first levels that you will approach when you play the game here, and this is the Palm Beach instance, the very first one. And also note that the green represents the real world environment that you will key out on a mobile device, but because I'm simulating this on my MacBook, you obviously don't have that same effect. Um, but within the gameplay and the experience itself, what we're looking for is improving upon. We have to crunch all the textures. We have to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And I want to walk through a little bit of the complications of what we've been trying to figure out for in the past months, and what we're really working towards to deliver the full geolocation experience in the new year. So one of the biggest things when it comes to mobile devices is you got to make sure that your memory cap and your CPU utilization is at a sustainable level to where you can play them on multiple devices. Now, on a new Apple device like this, I'm running an A13 chip, and it actually does a really good job of uh, balancing the load between the CPU and the GPU. And when you're talking about um, a game, it's GPU is anything from the global illumination, it's the UI, it's the obviously the physics and the render, or is it the rendering right here? So we're pretty much capped out in terms of what you can expect. What you can expect in the actual gameplay experience here. So I'm continually trying to improve upon making it a better experience to where it obviously simulates and runs on all devices to what for what it can really maximize the potential of the device itself. But the challenge there is that I don't want to focus on older devices that are going to become obsolete as time goes on, and the new operating systems actually get deployed. And this goes for both Apple and Android, although we are focusing more on the Apple side of things at the moment. It goes both ways, and as new devices focus more on the GPU CPU balance, there's a certain level of aspects that you have to look upon, and certain things you have to dismiss in terms of what's important. So the big thing for me right now is obviously keeping the frame rate up. And in the CPU usage here, we have, obviously this is simulating on a computer, so it's not really going to be something, and let me just go ahead and turn the audio off real quick so that you can see, you can actually hear me better here. But on the computer, obviously it's going to run better because it has a lot more hardware built into it. However, this does represent what you could expect on a mobile device, and because of that, you can kind of gauge where you're at in terms of the frame rate. So here we're looking at, it says anywhere from 1,000 to 250. Now, is that realistic for on a mobile phone? I don't necessarily think that is. But again, I'd have to plug in the build into the Android device and see how it runs while it's porting that information to the actual Xcode or whatever you're using, or the Android developer platform for the Android side. So we can look in here, and we can kind of, and this is profiler you use within Unity game engine, and there's similar ones I'm sure for other game engines. And you just kind of figure out what you can improve upon in terms of performance. And so I spent a lot of time removing things that sucked up a lot of CPU. So on a mobile, you have essentially particle effects and other stuff that are going to bog it down. And it really just comes down to how much information it has to portray or deliver to the mobile device here. So even like this little Firefog here, he has some particles going from him. And I don't necessarily know where those are in here, but if I look at the total what's being utilized here, you can tell, you can dig pretty deep in terms of what's really taken up a lot of the juice here. But it's actually in a pretty good place compared to what it used to be when we first started, and also running it on older devices. And when I say older, I mean like iPhone 7s or 8s, and even the iPhone 10 was having some issues in terms of what we were trying to doing. And that's just the name of the game when you try to crunch stuff down to a mobile device. There's tons of bottlenecks that you have to go through. And for me to facilitate and integrate all these different components into this experience was one of the most challenging things I've ever done as a newly established developer in gaming in terms of what I've been learning and focusing on, and my priorities for what is important to me in the industry. Obviously, there's many different resources you can use to develop and engage people, whether it's games or just applications or social media. And in terms of heavy gaming using a game engine, it's kind of the most I wouldn't say the most complicated, but it's definitely the most systems being brought together to make it function and work well in a manner to where it's going to run efficiently. So enough about that. I just wanted to kind of show you what it really what it takes to run this at a level to where you can get it deployed and run to where people can actually enjoy it and not have issues. And I'll be completely honest, we're still having some. It's only version 1, so we're still working on improving upon performance and how the game experience and the quests and the events, and making sure we look at all every time something happens, and maybe it will crash somewhere if you're loading too much stuff. We're constantly trying to improve upon that, and without losing all the components here to the right in our core system here. So I'm not going to really go through this stuff because it's not really relevant to the game. It's more about the system of what it's doing. But we do have an inventory system, a environment system, quest system, canvases that propagate a bunch of different things. And as of now, we just have the marketplace in place, our inventory system, which keeps track of what's going on here, and along with our crafting system, which has a few placeholder crafting elements that we will be updating shortly in the upcoming weeks to a lot more gameplay stuff. Again, version 1, the whole point of it is to get people's hands on the augmented aspects of the environment, get a feel for what we're doing here with the dual axis controller system. And when I say dual axis, it means we have a joystick here that controls our player character, and then we also have a system with the phone, which you can't see on the simulator, but if I'm using the phone, the sensors in the phone also move the camera. So for instance, our character here, Sully, can approach this, and he will get an area effect of interest of stuff where he is. But then when he gets in that area, he can also turn the phone around and look different areas and look up to where that tree would be right there and click on and collect items. And that's really where I mean the dual axis. So I am trying to figure out a few things here and provide and get feedback from my peers and individuals interested in this. Does it make sense to have a dual axis, or should we just have the camera attached to the player profile where it always is looking straight at him? Or is it fun to kind of have that third or that counter perspective of where you can look around in 360 environment depending on where you are in the augmented space? Another thing that we're thinking about is how practical is it to augment or key out the environments, because essentially just augmented reality is when you just key out the background, and it's very similar to instance in an After Effects video when you use a green screen where you're keying out a background, which I'm not doing that here, but it's just an example of how you use that kind of technology for your advantage here. So we have to really figure out if that makes sense. If you think about some of the other guys are doing in geolocation space gaming, they do have AR in it, and everybody kind of has that, but it's not necessarily the forefront strategy behind what they're trying to deploy as the experience. It's just kind of an add-on to the gameplay itself, and I took a little bit different route. I came in really trying to maximize the potential for the augmented environments, and I didn't just do that for my the phones, but it's also because eventually we're going to be deploying this entire adventure game to the Magic Leap in the upcoming months with our core platform. That's another strategy in place we're trying to work on as soon as we get this stuff figured out and we start getting some feedback. And the reason for that is simple. You don't want to start developing on something else before you haven't figured it out on the more practical device like a phone that more people have. And so that is essentially the performance aspects of what we're going through here. And I'm not really going to take the time to show you guys all the environments. I encourage you to download the application and play it yourself. And in a few weeks we will have the Android also available. The Android um, the Android version available to download, and then for all you um, Google phone guys and gals, you can try it on there too. And so I look forward to everybody's feedback, and it's very important to making this a uh, fun experience for all. And again, when I created this, it was based out of my interest and my passion for 3D and media and technology, and the 8-year-old kid in me that used to play Nintendo games and my Game Boy wanted to create something for myself that I can give back. And it took me 25 years to figure that out. So that's really where my head's at in terms of what we're going to be doing next, and why this came about. So I also, I know everybody's very interested probably in the geolocation, the geomap aspect. So it is working, it is running, we do have it available, and I haven't released it yet, because we're still in the process of fine-tuning our cloud migration for a lot of the profiling, and we're also making sure that we have a sustainable system that has all the security measures in place we need, and also all the player profiling system to where if you play something and you actually spend some money on some kind of asset within the system, or some kind of in-app purchase, that it's not something that gets lost up in the ether or the cloud there. So there are a lot of legal aspects and a lot of things that I want to work out first before I deploy that part of it, because at that point it's kind of the next level thing. So which is why I've been saying this is just the beginning for this. It's just to show everybody what we've been doing and what I personally have been working on for the last 4 or 5 years when I started this. And so what I'll do now is I'll open up one of our map scenes here, and I'll just show you the map system and kind of where we're at with that and what we're going to be doing next. And the cool thing about the map system is that it is very fluid and flexible to where you can change the look and the feel of it. And the important thing here is that we are utilizing Google APIs, Google Maps APIs to propagate our instance levels. And so, again, I'm not going to get into how that works or functions, but just know that we aren't physically placing these geo environments. We're using map data that's already been accumulated to do so, and then it allows us to focus more on the level experiences. And what you're hearing is just basically because I haven't updated this specific one, and this is also wrong. This is just a placeholder here. But you can see now we have our map view, and we have our buddy Sully here. He's representing some road that he's on. I think this is simulated, so this isn't specifically where I am in Fort Point. It's and then we have some placeholders that are being propagated through the API, which aren't actually skinned and textured appropriately. These are old ones, but as you approach them, they will open up and simulate the augmented environments there. So what I'm going to focus on in the upcoming weeks after we deploy the version 1 to the Android side is kind of figuring out the best look and feel and environment environment look and feel that would match and replicate the brand identity that we're creating here. And so if it's this kind of purpley dreamy feel, I don't really know. One thing I don't want to do is just have a bunch of everything and it kind of cluster together. I want it to be uniform and make sense, and again follow the design standards of what you'd expect in a game like this. But what I will do is I'll just kind of show you guys. If I go in the map here, and let's want to up a little bit, and I can zoom in, you can see that like a lot of the other geolocation games, we have a bunch of stuff that's being propagated using APIs, and we use tiles, and I'm not going to get into the details of how that works, but essentially as our player walks around, there's triggers, and all these little green objects represent the triggers that he can collide with, and when he collides with the triggers, it propagate some kind of feedback or experience that you would expect. So, and for instance, these little gears represent things you can pick up. These obviously are just placeholders. We're going to have other things that are available to collect. And if you can see the interface here, we have our different essence or elements here. So essentially, you're going to collect elements as you walk around the map. There's also NPCs that are negotiating the terrain here. These are just some small spiders that are going to walk around, and you can collect those and click them, and then they can obviously provide you something as well. And then, of course, the main bread and butter behind why we're building up the geolocation aspects is the instance levels, which have these triggers here. And again, they're not all, a lot of these are just kind of here in place being propagated because I've been testing out the performance and the overall usage of this as you travel and walk around the real world. So that is essentially where the map's going to be heading. And I have to figure out the best methods in terms of integrating this gameplay experience with the augmented environments and how they're going to mesh together and how you're going to go back and forth between all of them. And obviously, his idle animation right here is a funny one. He just kind of keeps on tapping his foot. We'll have to update that and make it to where it's, if he's just sitting there, it's a little bit more of a long-term fluid motion, and then as he walks around, it changes into a walk or a run depending on how fast you're moving. And also, I'm just noticing here that obviously the frame rate on this is not optimized for a mobile yet, and that's because I just started doing this. We're at 60 frames per second, which sounds nice, but that can heavily be improved upon by removing this background, which is probably very large, and the animation also is going to take a big chunk of it. And so if I'm just looking at this with everybody here, you can see that although it doesn't seem like it's pulling a lot of stuff, the editor itself has taken 80%, and the editor just represents this actual interface here, so that doesn't matter to us. We care about the player. So, I will release in the upcoming weeks in the new year some demo gameplay with this in the real world, and we can see how it actually functions and runs on different devices. Again, I'm using an iPhone 11 Pro. This is not the Max, and then we'll also have probably like a Pixel and a new Pixel phone, and then also like a Galaxy phone that we'll be testing on. So those are really going to be the three devices I'm going to use to test this personally within DigiFX. And then, of course, with like iPads and tablets and all the other devices out there, as we go and as the different proportions and size and the cropping that needs to be fixed and adjusted for different devices comes in, and we get feedback on what's right and what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, we will make sure that it works on multiple platforms or devices itself. But again, I'm hesitant to focus on older devices that soon will be obsolete due to the level of 3D interaction we're putting into this. I don't know if it really makes sense to focus on an older device with somebody who's probably more of a casual gamer, or they're more into casual entertainment, because they're probably not going to be the demographic that uses this or gets into this or would play this or would want to use this. So, but I could be wrong, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot. I know myself, I've always had the latest, greatest device because I am a technology media guy, and I constantly change from Android to Apple, back and forth. So you're welcome, both you guys, both your companies. But it really just comes down to, in the moment, what makes sense to me in terms of what device I use. And I've actually had a few different iPhones in the past variances of having a personal phone, and that's just because I have a MacBook, an iPad, and the integration between those three devices makes it really easy to do for workflow and all the other stuff you'd expect to do. And but we also are going to be using Android, like I said, shortly. So that's pretty much it in terms of the next steps for Oasis itself. Now, you're only in the when you download the version for iOS right now, you're only going to get a glimmer of a little bit of the actual inventory items that are included in the game itself. So what I'm going to do is I'll just open up our inventory and I'll show you kind of all the different things we got in here and what we're building into it. And this is part of the manifest we're creating for the different items, and what they do are going to be included, but there are I'm actually not even sure how many there are. There's a couple hundred things in here. We're continually adding different items that you can use and collect and engage with. And part of what makes Oasis Live unique is the event-driven gameplay you can expect to encounter as you go through these different levels. And I try to, from somebody that's picked up all the other geolocation games, and we know their names, I don't have to say them. I try to make this not as least redundant as I possibly could. And so what that means is I don't want the same thing to happen over and over and over. I want it to be a unique experience every time you go into a level. Now there is obviously going to be some redundancy in terms of the systems, and that's just the nature of playing a game and getting into it. But I also think if you focus more on the quests and the events themselves, you can work with writers and storytellers and creators to bring a new experience every single time and make it a unique new fun thing that keeps people coming back for more. And that really is my strategy behind this, and why I'm building this out, and why I focus so heavily on the instance levels and not so much on the map aspects now. Obviously there's a map, obviously the map propagates instance level gateways, I call them, but that's not necessarily going to be the crucial parts of it for me. It's going to be the collecting the map pieces, finding items that's going to get you to the next level, and then recovering the relics here. So the big thing you're going after here is you're collecting relics, and the relics are going to give you upgrades and all kinds of fun stuff. So this is the relic that we have in our demo here, or I should say our first release here that we've just released that you collect. It's just showing you the example of how it works. And again, there's a lot of other 3D relics I have yet to include in this actual platform specifically for Oasis that are going to be included. I have a list of a couple hundred that we have assets available and ready for that will be included soon. And I just don't want to get ahead of myself, and I want to make sure I have a sustainable platform and application here before I start adding more in. And I also want to make sure that when we start integrating this stuff with a cloud resource, whether it's Google Maps or AWS or Google Cloud, that we have everything in place before we start adding more to it. And that's just probably what everybody would do if they were serious about creating something like this. So if there's any questions or any ideas or any feedback you'd like to provide, we've been streaming for about 30 minutes now, so I'm going to just leave it at this. You can contact me at Nate@digifx.com, Nate@digifx.com. That's my personal direct email. And I will get back to you if you have any ideas, if you're interested in what we're doing and you want to be a part of it, if you potentially would like to invest some of your resources into what we're trying to accomplish here. I am always looking for help. I'm always looking for ideas and feedback. And again, this was made for the gaming community from somebody that has been a gamer for a long time. And I did this specifically for myself, but also for everybody else that can relate to me in terms of this kind of thing, these kind of gameplay experiences. So with that being said, this is Nate Miller from DigiFX, and I want to appreciate you all for taking the time to check out Oasis Live. And if you have an Apple device, be sure to download it today and play it and give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. And if you have an Android device, do not worry. We are going to be deploying in a couple of weeks, and you will have first-hand experience as well. And then lastly, prepare for the geolocation map aspect within the upcoming months. and the full-blown experience within spring in the U.S. in 2020. So I wish everybody happy holidays, and I hope you have a great new year, and I'll see you in 2020. Check you later.